So what's new, show 339?
Liberace of the sewing machine?
In fact,
no matter how you describe him, George Trippon is a star personality for women.
Really? Really? Really?
Really?
Yes, be specific, my mother always said. This way is the bias. Oh, I'm just full of tricks. In fact, that's why they call me an old bag of tricks.
No more is the home sewer a little old lady using chintz and polished cotton. This is the age of fashion liberation. Today's home sewer is a now woman.
Notice how I pin, please. Spill the pins, stab, lift, push, stab, lift, push, stab, lift, push. And you'll notice that we will lay this corner, please, right in that corner, please. No stretching, please. Face down, please. So we'll do a section at a time, so please watch me. Thank you.
Mr. Trippon was the art director and supervisor at one of the leading costume design schools in Southern California. He has studied extensively, both in leading schools here and in Paris, France.
Remember, you're doing the French scene, so pinez-vous.
She has escaped the bonds of the couture whip. She has had enough of poor workmanship and astronomical prices for manufactured garments. She is determined to be her own fashion expert, her own couture, and she needs help.
You take the high rise and I'll take the low. No, we're not going to Scotland. We're going to make some beautiful and new style trousers. And if you'll stick with me, I'll be right back.
I was actually a dancer when I was young. However, because I had broken a leg as a little boy and had a silver plate in it, I reached a point when I had to give up dancing. In order to stay in theater, which I loved, I decided to go into the costume end of it. Guys weren't allowed into the trade school in Los Angeles at that time, and it took an act of Congress for me to get past that particular barrier. But once I had done that, I managed to fly through trade school with bright colors.
And notice when I trim, please, that I am trimming flat on the table. In other words, my fabric is flat and my scissors never leave the table. The scissors are always on the table. They are not up in the air like this. Never. Never, never, never. Never, never. Really. No, you may throw that in the water if you want. Oh, but you stay out of the water, darling. Really, really.
While I was still in school, I had done a funny little sketch of a dress which the top designer at MGM Studios had seen. Later, I was asked to come to MGM to apprentice, and there I learned the couture work along with the production work.
Well, anyhow, this lovely, lovely actress in Hollywood once said to me, "Say, Trippy," she said, "what nationality are you?" I said, "Romanian." She said, "Oh, honey, that's not a nationality, that's a career."
My motto, as you probably know, is leave perfection to God, but try to get as close as you possibly can. So I became a designer's designer, working with designers to perfect.
I will sit and show you how we do things because, you know, my daddy always said to me, never stand when you can sit, and never sit when you can lie down.
I was born gay. I made the announcement at a family dinner. There are men who love women, there are women who love women, and men who love men. I'm a homosexual. My mother said, "We knew that." My dad said, "What else is new?" We continued eating. I was about 15 years old. I was a member of a ballet company. I danced with the Monte Carlo group. I worked in the store. My folks had a grocery store. I delivered orders. I was very busy.
If you watch carefully, you must remember, as they say, wherever they say it, I don't know, I read it in a book someplace, observation is 9/10 of learning. And if you don't watch yourself in this life, people will be observing you someplace where you shouldn't be.
Pershing Square, a city park in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. The park was also a mecca for the gay life in Los Angeles. From the pathways from each corner of the streets to a large circle of cement benches, the palm trees and banana trees formed a backdrop. The restrooms were downstairs off Hill Street. The park was well policed. Uniformed policemen and plainclothes vice squad kept an eye out for any indecencies. The cruising gays were well treated and protected. Recalling many incidents included warnings from the vice squad. Careful of that one, he's a rough trade. Don't entertain that one, he's got clap. Watch out for that one, he's sadistic. The gays were very discreet. We wore shirts, ties, and jackets. There were mad queens, too. The cruising in Pershing Square was exciting. Everyone's so friendly. I heard about many nightclubs that catered to the gay scene. Some of my new acquaintances invited me out to a few. I passed for a young adult. East of Western on Sunset was an old mansion called the Innis Club. Quiet atmosphere, lots of smoke filled the air as boy-boy couples danced. The tango was still the dance to do. Rio's was located off Central Avenue in a predominantly black neighborhood. Rio's was the most fun. Everyone was so friendly. We were also very thrilled to mingle and sometimes dance with many movie celebrities and stare at who also enjoyed Rio's. The end of the 30s and early 40s welcomed new clubs. Then Pearl Harbor happened.
That's a V, honey. V, V, V. V for victory. You wouldn't remember that if you're under 16. We had a World War II a few years ago, you know. This big fat guy from me running around going like that. I know he's doing it. Yeah.
I'd forgot my sweater at the induction center. So, back I went to Spring Street and back upstairs to the examining rooms. Dressed in my civvies, I wound my way through dozens of nude bodies being examined. "What the hell are you doing with your clothes on?" a gruff voice bellowed. "Oh, I've had my exam. I just came back for my sweater. I was dismissed because of my leg." "I don't give a shit what some doctor said. Get your ass in the next room. You're in the Army now. Now get the hell out of here." I found my sweater.
There are smiles that make us happy. There are smiles that make us blue. No smiles, please. Now, in pants, measurements are the most important thing.
I wish I were a very pretty fairy. I'd swish around with all the greatest ease.
One day, I entered the crowded mess hall for lunch. A quiet settled over the hall as the top sergeant signaled me to come to the front. "Turn around, Trippy. Face your squadron." I turned to all the smiling faces. Then a record began to play. The opening words rang out, "I wish I were a fairy."
I wish I were a very pretty fairy. I'd swish around with all the greatest ease.
Sung by John Ryan. A delightful ditty. I swayed with the beat of the music. After all, I'd grown up in Hollywood. While facing all my fellow GIs in the mess hall, I turned toward the kitchen. There, the one mess sergeant was mincing with hand on hip and the other in loose wrist movements as he pranced tippy-toe. Naturally, the mess hall was laughing. When the music stopped, I too laughed. I pointed my hand towards my back and said, "Thank you, you've seen the imitation," then pointed to my chest. "Now see the real thing." I walked the entire length of the mess hall to the front door and out. The applause was deafening. Later, I was presented with the record.
Right to where that dot is, because you want that collar to flow out of there, like the Blue Danube flows. The first time I was there, too, I expected the Blue Danube. I looked at that muddy stream of water running down there full of mud. And I said to the guy, I said, well, I don't get it. I thought it was the Blue Danube. He says, the Blue Danube is blue only to the people who are in love. Well, that night...
The party was a birthday affair. Some of the army nurses and other enlisted soldiers will be there. Also some civilians and townspeople. The apartment was on the second floor. It was small. The large console radio record player was playing soft music. The couch and chairs were all occupied, so I stretched down on the floor in front of the radio console. Some people were dancing and visiting. The apartment door opened, and the party guests all sang loudly, "Surprise! Happy birthday!" I was startled, and I looked up to see who had walked in. A head full of blonde hair, twinkling blue eyes, and a smile to melt your heart. Rosy cheeks and alabaster skin, taut and smooth. Whoa. He walked into the nearby room. He removed his coat. He opened a drawer. I lifted myself from the floor and moved towards him. "How come you're opening drawers?" An annoyed look creased his forehead. "I live here, that's why." "Happy birthday!" The party went on and on. That night, I fell in love. I spent the night.
Get the facing out of the way, and notice that you are kissing this edge to that edge. Yes, anytime two things make a contact, that's a kiss, honey.
In the following weeks, I visited the apartment, but no one was ever there. I left little notes. One weekend, I went to town shopping. I had a sore throat, so to the town drugstore I went. I went to the counter, and there he was. Blue eyes smiling and an amused look. "May I help you?" "Yes, do you have anything for a sore throat?" He reached down into the counter. He handed me a small pocket knife. He saw my expression, and his face bloomed into a full smile. I smiled back. They had soda fountains in drugstores then. I sat at the counter, and he came to wait on me. It was the fanciest hot fudge sundae I ever had. When I left, I wandered into a flower shop next door. I bought a single red rose. A young boy was there, and I asked him to take it to the drugstore. I said, "Give it to Mr. Price." I tipped him. Later, Jimmy told me that the young boy asked for Mr. Christ.
You know, you must learn to control your machine. You must never let your machine control you. The more you women learn to control your sewing machine, I shouldn't say this, the more you can control the man in your life. Because a man is like a machine. Keep him well oiled and he's happy.
World War II was raging in Europe and in the Pacific. Many parties later, I now had a permanent pass. I moved into the apartment. On my second furlough, I brought Jimmy home to Hollywood with me. It was wartime. The clubs were mad. People were gay and happy. It was always party time. It was a great 2 weeks. We returned and settled down.
Turn the fabric all the way around and lock stitch manually. Hunt, a 2, a 3, 4. Hunt, 2, 3, 4. That last one you didn't have to do, but I was taken back to my army days. Oh, those were terrible days, lovely days. We had a thing called the black market going. Where is that black market today? I think it moved to Vietnam or someplace.
We have the first prisoners of war from Africa and Italy. We have German prisoners and Italian prisoners. Each of you will take charge of 50 prisoners. You'll pick up your contingent of prisoners at the stockade each morning. You will march your group into a specific area off the road near the woods. The prisoners will clean up the surrounding areas. You'll keep the prisoners grouped and you'll maintain strict observation and discipline.
At 12 noon, you'll take your prisoners and march them back to the compound. Count the prisoners, sign yourself out, and report back to the guardhouse before you go to chow. Any questions? Okay, follow the sergeant to your particular area.
I arrived at my area, and there were the prisoners, already in formation, waiting for me to march into the woods.
Attention! Forward, march! Right turn!
We were marching down the highway to a nearby wooded area. The young prisoners marched with heads high and with a military cadence. They sang robustly and loud in time with their marching. The singing was so inspiring that I found myself marching with vigor, too. I made one mistake. I was leading the pack, and I was in front of the group with my rifle over my right shoulder, humming right along. A jeep drove by and stopped abruptly.
Halt!
The colonel screamed.
What the fuck do you think you're doing, Corporal? You're supposed to be behind the prisoners, watching them. And why are you limping?
He turned to the sergeant in the jeep and commanded him to take over. To me, he said to get my goddamn ass back to the guardhouse and wait for him. I did.
You know, years ago, I used to have the expression, I was young, I used to go to all these lovely parties, and I don't need drinks to intoxicate me. People intoxicate me. Really, they do. And I used to, feel so good, and I used to run around, and my favorite expression was, oh, I feel so mellow. And people kind of look at me, And then I met this smart Alec. And let me tell you, he said to me, mellow. Do you know what the word mellow means? Well, yeah. He said, I don't think you do, or he wouldn't use the expression. He said, mellow, like a ripe wine, means rotten with age. I never use that expression again, let me tell you.
Now, according to your file here, you're from Hollywood, California. I see that you're a dress designer.
Yes, sir.
Now, tell me why you're here.
I don't know why I'm here. I reported to guard duty. The colonel told me he didn't want anyone with bad gams, as I have a slight limp when I walk.
Do you like the Army?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any problems being around other men?
No, sir.
Do you have a special friend back home?
No, but I have a friend in Cheyenne.
And is this friend a man or a woman?
A man.
His age about the same as yours?
Yes, sir.
You miss him?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Now let me read the rest of this report. You have a good conduct medal, you've earned the Sharpshooter Rifle Award, and you are now a Corporal 5th grade. You know, Corporal Trippon, you're in the psychiatric ward.
Yes, sir.
You think you'd be okay here in this larger ward with all these men and casualties, or would you prefer a locked ward?
I'll be okay here, sir. I've been here for 2 days now, and everything is fine.
Good and well, Corporal. We'll let you rest now. We'll take further action after we review your case.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies, today we are going to top off our Suture Soft group with the finishing touch, our hat. In just 1 week, we have created an entire wardrobe. This hat is a lot of fun, so stick with me.
Corporal, as a dress designer, do you know anything about ladies' hats?
Well, yes, sir, I do.
Last year, I bought my wife this brown felt hat with a wide brim. It cost $75, and this year she tells me that it is out of style. Do you suppose the hat can be remodeled or redesigned?
Oh, yes, sir, it can. The hats today are shaped and ribboned or flowered. They also have bows and buttons.
If I brought the hat in, could you check it out, see what can be done?
I'd be happy to check it out, sir. 2 days later, the brown felt wide-brimmed hat arrived, along with a couple of extra hats. In the washroom tub, I placed the felt hat, covered it with hot water, and let it soak. After soaking, I wrung out the excess water and began to shape the crown of the hat. While this was going on, the ward came to life. Everyone seemed to want a hat remodeled, the nurses and the wives of the casualties. In a couple of days, 6 guys were soaking, stretching, and shaping hats. Some sensational shapes took place. Of course, there was the usual macho attitude of some.
What the fuck you guys doing? Bunch of sissies?
This sergeant barked obscenities for 3 days. He had been bedridden for 2 months. It was the hats that made him actually sit up and begin to interact with everyone. Within a week, he too was up, shaping hats for his wife. Then, one day, the soldier who had the bed to the right of me, the one who always stared at the ceiling, propped himself up on his elbows. "What the fuck's all the excitement?" Soon, he too was sitting up in bed participating in the hat making, cutting ribbons for his roommates. This activity was not overlooked by the superiors.
Oh, that's for that armhole. So you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. In fact, nobody should ever go wrong after they pass the age of 16. You can go wrong up to the age of 16, but after 16, I'm sorry. It's like all those marvelous things, you read about. Like Lincoln said once, I didn't know what he meant until I looked in the mirror once. I said, a man is responsible for what his face looks like after he's 35 years old. And I was 18 when I read that, and I could hardly wait to be 35 so I could look in the mirror and see what he was talking about. No, I found out what he was talking about.
I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Hat making, or rather re-hat making, was now in full swing. I was called into the office. "We've checked the x-rays of your ankle. We've decided to give you a medical discharge. The joint in your knee may need surgery. We feel that you are 10% disabled for military duty. Your papers will be submitted this day. In a few days, you'll be discharged honorably." "Thank you." "We have a question to ask you." "Yes, sir?" "Would you consider staying here a while? We need someone for therapy. You've been a great inspiration to the patients here. Think about it and let me know." A day later, I announced that I could set up a program and that I would stay a week to get it started.
You sandwich the collar between the facing and the garment. Sandwich. Poor man in the restaurant. What happened to him? I'm telling you, this day and age, you never know. You have to be so careful. So you watch that. The sandwich reminded me of that, Poor man went into the restaurant and he put his hat and coat on the hat rack. And he says, "Please watch your hat and coat." And pretty soon he yelled for the manager. He says, "Please come over here. I have a complaint." He says, "Yes, may I help you?" He said, "Yes, I was watching my hat and coat and somebody walked off with my dinner." Telling you.
When the train pulled into the station in downtown Cheyenne, Pat and Joyce were waiting for me. "Where's Blonde Jay?" I asked. "He's waiting at the apartment." We walked the few blocks from the depot to the apartment. The three of us entered to find Blonde Jay waiting. Our mutual smiles were clouded by our tears. For a time, Blonde Jay and I just gazed at each other. Then we embraced, the laughter and tears still in our eyes. The world is full of ecstasy. The next day, we awoke refreshed, in love, and hungry.
The stride is that area from here to there going that way. So you have to be careful about that, because if you don't have enough stride, it's going to pull your pants that way or pull your pants this way, so you need enough room that way. Now that, of course, comes in the pattern this way. And you take that measurement the same way. You don't have to stride yourself through your stride to your stride measurement. Just stride yourself through your stride by coming from center front to center back, and by God, you got your stride.
I made plans for us to go to California, but Blonde Jay was skeptical. What about his job? 5 years in Cheyenne, one doesn't just pick up and leave. "Everything will be fine," I assured him. "Let's take a week to relax and plan." We packed. The shippers came and we boarded a train for San Francisco. We arrived in Los Angeles, home, 1944. In October 1992, we celebrated our 50th anniversary.
Ladies, bias is very, very important. When you cut your fabric on the bias, the fabric clings to the body. It makes it what we call sexy.
George W. Trippon, director of the Trippon Fashion Center and Fashion Authority, guides each student for a successful career in the fashion world. His long experience in the garment manufacturing field and in his own custom salon qualifies him as a leader in fashion education.
People asked me to teach them a few things, and little by little, one student led to another, and before I knew it, I had a school.
So what's new is fun and entertainment. We would like you to meet the galloping gourmet of the needle, Mr. George Trippon.
The phrase used to be, tennis anyone? Now, of course, it is tennis everyone. And with the money you can save making our beautiful tennis outfits, you can hire that handsome pro for private lessons. So, stick around. We're going to have a lot of fun.
So what's new? Starring Vogue Sewing Authority.
One of my students, a producer's wife, graduated and later came back with her husband. I agreed to let them monitor the class I was teaching that afternoon. When it was over, the producer told me he could make me a star. Well, I knew better than to believe that, but I decided to give the show a go anyway.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. Good heavens. Well, you just have to make a bigger bow, see? Make a big, long bow. Oh, my gosh. And I'll just pin these two edges together at this point. Now, this is a halter type thing. You all know what a halter is. You know, it goes here and it halts you here, so it's a halter. But at this point, especially at the plunge point, I make sure I anchor it, because there's nothing worse than putting a dress on like this and you say, oh my God, it plunges way down there. You gotta be careful about that. It's terrible. I'm going to repeat that you pin with only the tip of the pin. The head of the pin is out, the dress is towards you, or the garment's towards you, and the seams are away from you. Of course, you have to put yourself in my place. What a lovely spot to be in.
I was born a happy soul, and I love what I do. That's a marvelous feeling.
Promotional consideration furnished by Vogue Patterns and Unique Zippers.
The phrase used to be, tennis anyone? Now it's tennis everyone. And with the money you save making this Vogue tennis dress, pattern 8549, you can hire that handsome tennis pro to give you private lessons. It's so easy to make, and it looks so great on the court. I guarantee you'll score the first point. Get Vogue pattern 8549 wherever Vogue patterns are sold. I've told you about it. Now it's yours, serve.